Today on Mormon Times, the power of social media.
I think Heavenly Father really led me to these other bloggers, and I just feel so blessed to have gotten to know them and to work with them.
32 popular Mormon mommy bloggers band together to share their faith online. We'll tell you how their message is received among the hundreds of thousands of people who follow them. And despite her blindness, she is feeling her way through the scriptures.
There's so many different situations, and the church has been awesome to include all of us.
Using Braille, audio files, and other resources to help plan her gospel doctrine lessons. And a panel discussion on how you can best serve those with special needs. We'll be clearing up common misconceptions concerning those who are disabled. Good morning and welcome to Mormon Times. You've heard several church leaders say it. Use social networking sites to share the good news of the gospel.
Perhaps the Lord's encouragement to open our mouths might today include use your hands to block and text message the gospel to all the world.
Recently, a number of LDS women who blog, part of the growing Mormon mommy blogger phenomenon, decided to band together, put their faith out there, and see what happens.
I love to share fashion and refashion, mainly refashion tips.
I'm a jewelry designer, so I feature my latest pieces, and then I also do a lot of recipes.
I am basically cooking. I do a little gardening.
I thought it would be fun to have one that was kind of like the target of blogs, like a little bit of everything.
My blog is primarily just writing about just parenthood.
I'm kind of different from all these gals. I do hair tutorials on my little girls.
Their backgrounds are varied, but they all blog for the masses and post their creations to fill people's needs.
I think in our religion, we're just brought up in this culture of journaling and sharing your talents and helping others.
And I think, that's what brings us together, is just the need for help and ideas.
But Marielle stumbled on some things online that made her unhappy.
Things that were disrespectful to Christianity and religion and to the LDS Church.
She prayed about it, and the answers she received required her to step into new territory and reinforce the positive in a bold new way.
I knew that I needed to gather some bloggers, and I knew that I needed to gather their testimonies and put them together and send them out with Book of Mormons.
Some didn't want their blogs branded as Mormon, but most were enthusiastic, and Marielle landed a group of 32 women willing to tell their collective audience about their faith.
And I've struggled as a mom thinking, okay, how am I being a missionary? And I mean, in reality, you are within the home, but this has been a nice way to express it openly to those that read my blog.
It's always scary to put yourself out there with something that's so sacred and so personal to you, something that you hold so dear to your heart.
The group produced a 32-page packet that's mailed to blog followers who request it, along with a copy of the Book of Mormon.
There is something about having that physical packet with the physical copy of the Book of Mormon there together.
It is just every one of our testimonies, answering the question like why we are Mormon, what makes our life better because we're Mormon.
They each included 3 of their favorite scriptures and offered to answer readers' questions. The women started this in September, and in just 3 weeks' time, the 9 bloggers who got their posts up had 194 requests for packets, which they basically pay for themselves.
And a lot of these friends that I've met through blogging that are not members, I've had good conversations with them about it, and a couple of them have been interested in packets.
I've gotten some from people that said, I am so interested in what makes you Mormon moms tick.
So hopefully by sharing our full testimonies, it will allow them to know exactly what our beliefs are and what we represent in the church.
It's just letting our light shine and being a positive influence out there.
I think in subtle ways you can let people know that this is important to you.
If it entices people to come unto Christ, I think that's awesome.
If you'd like to check out the blogs of these 6 LDS women, we will have their links on our website. Just go to mormontimestv.ksl.com. Well, what do you think about technology boundaries for your kids, waiting for missionaries, and public displays of affection at church? LDS Living magazine got lots of public response when those questions were posed to their readers, and we thought the results were interesting enough to weigh in on the polls as well. We live in a world where everything seems to be high-tech. Cell phones, computers, video games, MP3 players, and our children want in. But what's appropriate? Take a look at the responses from LDS Living magazine readers when asked about technology boundaries for children. Nearly 70% think it's okay for kids to have cell phones starting at age 14.
I think it's necessary for a child to have a cell phone when they start leaving home, like going to dances or going to parties, hanging out away from home.
But when it comes to having TVs, computers, and video games in their bedrooms, the response was definitive.
Most people did not agree with internet or television in the room specifically, which, you know, I think is a wise decision.
Look at how different the answers were to the question about MP3 players and cell phones in rooms. An overwhelming yes, but
if it's a smartphone, they have internet access on that phone. It's just like having a computer in your room.
And those polled seem to agree there should be usage rules.
But, you know, some of the restrictions that people liked were that they turned in the phones at night, or they restricted the amount of hours or minutes that they were using the phone or the iPod.
In other words, set limits and be aware of what your children are doing.
Is it hard on a missionary to have someone waiting for him?
Yes, it is, especially when you find out that they're not waiting anymore.
So first, do you think it's okay to wait?
I think that you can miss out on opportunities if you wait for a missionary.
And missionaries need to be focused, not distracted. But look at this, not everyone gets Dear John. And of those who did wait, only 15% ended up getting married.
The important thing, I think, is to be really appropriate with what you're writing the missionary.
And finally, public displays of affection in church. Are they appropriate? Most say it depends.
Sometimes it's necessary in a singles ward.
I found it interesting that more than half had seen inappropriate public displays of affection at church.
So what's inappropriate? Many think there's a fine line.
What's hard is everyone has a different level of tolerance, but you need to remember that church is for worship.
Well, I think like back scratching, I think that's okay. Maybe holding hands, but once you start kissing, I think that's kind of crossing the line. And keep that outside the chapel.
But you have to remember there are people behind you that are watching this hand go back and forth, and just, it's very distracting, and that was I can't talk about this. Keep it to yourself, people.
LDS Living magazine runs reader polls all the time, and if you want to take a look, we'll have a link on our website at mormontimestv.ksl.com. Well, the church wants everyone to have access to the scriptures. Coming up next, meet a woman who uses a Braille Book of Mormon, audio files, and a screen reader to help her teach the gospel doctrine lessons in Sunday school. Then we'll have a discussion about reaching out to those with special needs. Find out what you can do to make life better for those in your ward with disabilities. For many of us, being called to teach the adult gospel doctrine class might be a little intimidating, but Barbie Elliott is grateful for the challenge. She was born blind, but she hasn't let that limit her from studying the scriptures. Here's her story.
I love learning the gospel, always have loved learning the gospel. I've done a lot of different teaching. I've taught primary, I've taught Relief Society, I have been a visiting teaching coordinator, I have played the piano for years and years. Currently I'm teaching gospel doctrine, and I'm loving it. As I would go to primary and I would learn about Jesus, I was fascinated by the stories. The only place that I could learn about the scriptures was at church. I couldn't get a copy of the Book of Mormon or the Bible or any of the magazines and look at it, and I wanted to know more, and so I would eat it up at church. When we graduated from primary, everyone got a copy of the Book of Mormon. They gave me a Book of Mormon reader, which was the little kids version, and I got through that in the same weekend. They gave it to me, and I just wanted more. And so we checked out cassette tapes from the library. I listened to those and got through the entire Book of Mormon in 2 weeks. I was about 27 before I had my own copy of the Book of Mormon in Braille. I was able to finally read what I already had a testimony of for the first time when I was in my 20s. One of the great big challenges for Braille is it's so big. I have over 70 volumes of manuals and scriptures, and they're huge. Now gotten into the technological age, and I use my iPhone with a program called VoiceOver that makes an iPhone talk. And I also use my laptop, and I access a lot of things online. Using that combination of the technology that's been developed for blind people in general and the church's website, I think that has probably been the most wonderful thing for me, because now I have access to things that I didn't before. How God feels when He's watching. And the church makes sure that each individual person can have the gospel. And that's really important. He's watching over you, His children.
Barbie has taught both the Old and New Testament classes and is currently teaching from the Book of Mormon. Well, coming up next, Barbie's actually going to join us on the show for a panel discussion on how members can reach out to those with disabilities. She'll be joined by 2 others who will share their insight on serving children with special needs. As we serve in the church, many of us will be given the responsibility of working with or caring for someone with a disability. Several years ago, the First Presidency issued a statement inviting members to seek creative ways of providing religious training for those with physical, mental, and emotional impairments. That statement read, "It is our opportunity and our responsibility to follow the example of Jesus in loving our neighbors," and that includes those with disabilities. One of the first steps to loving someone is to understand them, and today we hope to increase your understanding of those with special needs. Joining me on the show are Barbie Elliott, a mother of 4 who has been blind since birth, Dallin Cottrell, the father of 2 children with autism, and Tracy Beitendorp, who has a teenage daughter with Down syndrome. Welcome to all of you. Tracy, what do you think? How should people reach out to people with Down syndrome? How should church members help?
The biggest thing is include them into what the church and the ward and whatever, I mean, if it's young women's, young men's, include them.
They can participate in just about anything.
They can do just about everything you can.
Dallin, I know that you and your wife did a really neat thing going to the primary and working with them to help your kids. Tell us what you did.
Yeah, we just went and visited during the sharing time part of primary, and our son at the time was starting to act out a little bit, where he was being noticed a little bit more as being different, you know, making the noises or you know, being a little bit more fidgety than the other kids his age. And so we went and talked to him, and we just wanted to let them know not only how they could help him, but also we wanted it because they're going to be his friends for life, you know, in the neighborhood and at school. And so to always be able to keep an eye out for him and kind of protect him a little bit from the kids who don't already know him.
That's a great idea. What about you, Barbie?
You know, I feel like the greatest thing that ward members have done for me and for others who are blind is to remember to include us. You know, if you see me or somebody else sitting by themselves, come over and invite us to sit by you. We're not going to see you and come and sit by you. And so, you know, that's one of the things I love. Or just in service, we want to be contributors as well as consumers of service in the church. And that includes blind people and all people.
What advice would you give to people in the ward and in the neighborhood and in working with people with disabilities?
If you are called to a service end of being in young women's or young men's and you have a child that has a disability within that, the biggest advice I would give you would be go talk to the parents. Go find out what that child's likes, dislikes aren't. Then you can maybe reach this child or this person in a way that you won't be able to do without having communication between the family and the person serving for that family. We had an opportunity with our daughter in one of the church activities that she was involved in. They had someone come in and specifically be her friend and be able to take her. And so she was able to participate with that activity on a on a regular basis. So she was able to feel included. Feel included. So think outside the box.
Yeah, okay. And what would you say? What would your advice be, Dallin?
I would say that special needs and disabilities, they can make families feel quite isolated. I think one thing that members and families and really everyone can do is get to know the disability and get to know how they can help. And really, for families, we know what it's like to take care of a child with needs or a disability. And it's difficult. It's not easy. It's not natural. It doesn't come natural to you. We have to learn how to do that. And so for others and families and friends and neighbors to really just insert yourself in there and offer your services.
Right, give you a little relief or help sometimes, maybe even tending, those kinds of things.
Definitely.
Yeah, that'd be great. And Barbie, what do you
My thoughts are, President Hinckley said that every member needs three things. They need a responsibility, a friend, and to be nourished by the good word of God. And I think that definitely includes those of us with disabilities. We need callings, we need friends, and we need to have testimony building experiences. And I'm so grateful for those who've gone out of their way in my life to have been my friend, more than just an assignment, but to actually
get to know
stay my friend. Ward boundaries change, you're still my friend.
Yeah.
Those precious moments mean the world to me. And I think they do to everyone, especially those that don't always get included in the outside of church world that we live in.
Well, thank you, and thanks for helping us all understand. Appreciate it so much. Today, you can go to lds.org/disability to find out more information on this topic. We'll also have a link to that website at mormontimestv.ksl.com. We all know the temptations our youth face today can be overwhelming. Coming up next, get an arsenal of tools to help them combat the troubles that confront them. We'll share tactics that both parents and youth can use to help keep them on safe ground. Teens today, they're bombarded by temptation on so many different fronts. They deal with issues earlier generations didn't even seem to have to worry about. But don't despair, because there's some valuable tools that can help them combat these temptations. Seminary and BYU religion instructor Hank Smith is here to talk about some of these tools. And, what are some of the temptations the kids today face that maybe we didn't face?
One thing they must understand is that the world is different than it was 20 years ago.
I agree.
The things that our youth face today are much different than what our parents faced when they were youth. Things that you'd have to go to a dark alley to find 20 years ago, you can now get on your phone in your bedroom.
Yeah, technology is just
technology
totally
has changed everything, and it continues to change everything every day. It would be best if they could understand that what they faced is not good enough. Let me take that back. What they faced and how they overcame it is not going to work this time around. They've got to increase their efforts.
Well, and even with the media, that's, what's on TV and in movies, I mean, it's far different than what we had.
Think how media has changed and technology has changed certain temptations like bullying and gambling, pornography especially. Technology has completely changed how kids face this temptation, how often they face those temptations.
So what do you suggest that teenagers do to get past it and overcome the temptations they may see out there?
The first thing, if I go out to speak to a youth group, the first thing I want them to understand is that if you're tempted, there's nothing wrong with you. Sometimes I think we send that message out, that if you're tempted, somehow you're broken.
Then it's normal.
Yeah, something's wrong. But if you're tempted with anything, you're not broken. You're human. Okay. And that's part of the mortal experience. So that's the first thing I want them to understand. And then the second thing, I try to use an analogy that President Monson uses often. He says that sins are like the barnacles that attach themselves to boats.
That, yes.
And as a boat is heading across the ocean, it picks up these barnacles along the way. Well, these ship captains know that these barnacles slow down the boat, so they got to get themselves to fresh water. They've got to get up to a river that's coming into the ocean. Well, the same way, the Lord has provided us fresh water, places where we can go and these sins kind of die and fall out of our lives. I would say get to the temple, Time in the Scriptures is fresh water. Family home evening, effective family scripture study, family prayer. All of these things are fresh water where we can go and these sins seem to die off.
And where you can feel the Spirit.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. If you can feel the Spirit, then these things go away. No one ever walks out of the temple thinking, I just want to go hurt people or I want to go sin. It just doesn't happen that way.
Okay. And what about we as parents? What can we do to help the teenagers?
I would say with parents, spend as much personal and positive have as much personal and positive interaction with your kids as you possibly can. If they would see that even dinner time can be one of those freshwater experiences where kids they'll feel those sins and things will die off. And then in high trust relationships, this is where I'm studying over at BYU, in high trust relationships, people are more naturally going to share what's going on in their life. And so as you're spending this time together, you'll be surprised that youth will start to open up. I talked to one woman, if I can tell you.
Yeah.
She and I were talking together, and her son was really involved with he was having some major drug problems. They were trying to get him through rehab, trying to get him to open up to him, but he was really closed. And she said, I did what you asked me to do. When he plays his video games, I'm right there next to him, and I knit. And I said, is that positive? She said, yeah, it's positive. I said, is it personal? She said, no, not really.
You got to talk.
Yeah. I said, what are you going to do? And so she said, don't make me do it. And I said, you got to do it. So she sat down with her controller and she learned how to play whatever game he was playing. And guess what started to happen? He started to talk. They started to open up. And those experiences helped he and his mom connect. And then she was able to help him through some of these things that he was just too young to handle himself.
And trust builds. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Hank. He's a popular speaker at Especially for Youth, and many of his talks for youth are available at Deseret Book. Well, you could call it the trip of a lifetime. Nearly a dozen young women from Fredrikstad, Norway smiled as they exited customs. This was at the Salt Lake International Airport. For most of them, this was their first ever trip to America, and a trip that they've been saving for the past year. The main purpose? To attend General Conference.
We have seen it on TV and and now we're going to see it in real life, so that's going to be really fun.
Well, the idea for the trip came to a young women leader while she visited Salt Lake City last year.
While I was in the temple, the Lord just told me, he said, Cece, you know, if you love these girls as much as you say, take them here. Let them have the experience that you had, and hopefully that will help them grow a strong testimony.
Hear how their testimonies changed after being in the presence of prophets and church leaders. It's coming up on next Sunday's show. Well, thanks for joining us today on Mormon Times. You can also follow us on our Facebook page at Mormon Times TV. We hope that you have a wonderful day.